Hello everyone and welcome to another video of the Sky channel. Now in this video we are going to be talking about Guardian PvE tier list, in particular for Pangolin, or if you're a Guardian main, also for Groundhog. I know this video has been a long time coming. I know I should probably be faster, but if you knew how long it takes to make each of these videos, it's not just the recording. I spend a ton of time editing the video so that if I am talking too much and it's turning out to become nonsense, I try to cut that part out. So you're not going like, what is this guy even saying? Anyhow, before we get started, I do want to give a big thank you to Aptoide for sponsoring this video. An important thing to note is that our promo code is about to change. It's currently Sky 5, but within about a week or so, we're going to have a new promo code and the old one will get expired. So Sky 5 will no longer be giving you a bonus. Please make sure to update your promo code as soon as I provide it to you. I'll be using the community tab in our YouTube channel as well as Discord to be communicating the new promo code. For those of you who don't know about Aptoide, it gives you between 10 to 35% bonuses on in-game purchases when you make purchases in the ends. The process isn't very complicated. There's a video that goes through the whole process with you. So if you're interested and you're an Android user, by the way, you do have to be an Android user. It'll soon come to Apple, maybe in about a few months, but right now it's only for Android. So if you're interested, check out the video and hopefully you can benefit from the bonuses as well. Let's get to our tier list. But before that, I do always let you know which insect is the best for this, and currently I still think Gladiator Mantis comes on top. It does seem to have a lot of skill attack and skill damage, which can be particularly useful when we are talking PvE. My understanding is that the new carrier insect is amazing for PvP, but not amazing for PvE. Okay. Now let's go to the S plus tier, essentially meaning these are the best ants to use for PvE if you're using Guardians. And we will start with Hairy Panther. Now we all know about Hairy Panther. It is pretty deadly. It's a Baron ant. It's one of the rare Baron ants. But let's take a look at why it's so deadly. Skill number 2. And if you go to the max level effect, we're talking 60% chance to deal 400% damage to the enemy squad with the highest power, and a 60% chance to suppress them, which doesn't matter. We're only going to focus on 60% chance to deal 400% damage. Skill number 5. In rounds 1, 3, 5, and 7, which basically means every other round, there's a 60% chance to deal 400% damage to all enemy squads. So add that up. That's 1200% damage in total every other round with a 60% chance. Again, that is pretty amazing. Now, if you go to skill number 8, 400% damage to one enemy squad each round, and if it's under control, there's a chance to do 500% damage instead. So 400 to 500% guaranteed damage each round with skill 8. Add all these things up and you can see why this ant does so much damage in total. And that's why it is in the S plus tier category. Moving along, we can go to the next one, and that is going to be one of the ants that I don't have, and it is Atta. So let's talk about Atta. Okay, skill number 2 increases the skill damage by 45%. And we all know how important skill damage is when we are talking PvE because it's all about the skills. Skill number 5, 80% chance to deal 450% damage to a random enemy squad, while also increasing its own squad defense by 70%, and it can be stacked, so it can go up to 140. And defense generally doesn't contribute to damage, but you'll see why I did mention this particularly. So 80% chance, a high chance to deal 450% damage, which is a lot of damage to an enemy squad, and also increasing its defense by 70% up to 140%. Skill number 8. And this is where the defense part comes in. In the first 3 rounds, all of our squads convert 10% of their defense into attack and then deals 550% damage to all enemy squads. So think about that. 550% damage to all enemy squads. 1650% damage in total, and it's guaranteed in the first 3 rounds. So each round you're doing this high amount of damage, but also if you notice, before we do that, we actually convert 10% of our defense into attack, which means that our attack is probably going to skyrocket. And we also have this other skill that's giving us additional defense, so you're probably going to get even more attack As you can imagine, this is probably the most deadliest skill and does a lot of damage. The only bad part is that it's only in the first 3 rounds, and PvE is all about 8 rounds. So maybe in the long run it does get a little bit less useful over the 8 rounds, but of course that's a huge amount of damage that we're still talking 16-50% in each of the first 3 rounds with that extra bonus of getting additional attack. Okay. So now you can see why Atta is such a good ant, and that's why it's an S+ tier. Let's move on to the next S+ tier ant, and that is going to be Leaf Devourer. Okay, so let's talk about it. Skill number 2. Prepares for 1 round and then has an 80% chance of attacking the enemy 3 times, dealing 140, then 280, then 560% damage respectively. Add that up and we're talking 980% damage for 1 round of preparation and an 80% chance. That is quite high damage. And of course, there's a round of preparation, but even then, 980% with an 80% chance is still a really good hit. Skill number 5. In its squad, there's additional skill damage dealt by 12.5% and it can be stacked once per round up to 100%. In other words, it increases its skill damage by 12.5% each round, and of course by the 8th round we're talking 100% because 12.5 multiplied by 8 is 100%, which means that Leaf Devourer gets stronger over time and its skills will do more and more damage as the rounds progress, which you can see why it is good for PvE because you are going to stay all 8 rounds. Okay. Skill number 8. In its squad, increases Guardian Soldier's attack by 15% and deals 240% damage to 2 random enemy squads each round. Again, a guaranteed hit, 240% to 2 targets, which is 480% damage each round. And additionally, you have a 15% extra attack, which helps as well. Now, keep in mind that you also have the extra skill damage coming into play, and that is also helping making all of these attacks much stronger. So that's what makes Leaf Devourer an S+ tier. Now let's go to our next S+ tier and that is going to be Proatta. We all know about Proatta. It's actually become sort of free to play. I'm going to get it soon after one more of those events. Okay, so what makes Proatta so special? Skill number 2, 55% chance to deal 275% damage to 2 random enemy squads within the effective range and grants you 70% chance to dodge incoming damage, which doesn't matter because you're not going to be getting incoming damage from either Pangolin or Groundhog. So a 55% chance to deal 275% damage to 2 squads, which is great. The chance is a little bit low, but the damage is fairly high. Let's go to skill number 5. 65% chance to attack 3 times, doing 142% damage each time to 1 random enemy squad, and if it hits the back line, reduces the skill damage of the next skill by 30, which doesn't matter. So what's important is 65% chance to attack 3 times, each time dealing 142% damage to the enemy. And of course, you can see that the calculations were a little bit more complicated. I've never seen special land level multiplied by 0.6 until today. Maybe it's because I never had Proatta before, but it adds up to 142 at level 50. So 142 into 3 is about 426% damage with a 65% chance. That's great. Skill number 8. In rounds 2, 4, and 6, deals 270% damage to all squads. And if it's shooter, it's going to double, but it's not going to be a shooter because it's going to be either Pangolin or Groundhog. So 270% damage to all squads, coming up to 810% damage, but it's guaranteed in these 3 rounds, which means over the course of the battle, you're going to be doing 2,430% damage with this skill, which is amazing. And if you divide it by 8 to get the number for each round, you are talking 303% damage each round guaranteed. So that's what makes Proatta really good for PvE. 3 skills, each of the skills are fairly deadly. They all do decent amount of damage. Okay, so next we're going to go to our last S+ tier ant, and maybe this might surprise you. I wasn't sure if this should be an S+ tier or S, but I think it's an S+ given how effective it's been with a lot of different people who've tried it. And that's our very old gold armor. Okay, so let's talk about the skills really quickly because hopefully all of you have this and you have seen it before. 55% chance to deal 457.5% damage to 1 squad, which is a pretty high damage, and it could happen every turn, but of course there's a 55% chance. Skill number 5, 40% chance to deal 321% damage to 2 random enemy squads, which can add up to 642% damage. There's a 40% chance, but if you're extremely lucky, you could be doing it multiple times within the 8 rounds. Skill number 8. And let's go to the max level effect. Prepares for a round, and then there's a 40% chance to deal 362% damage to all 3 of the enemy squads. That's 1086% damage. And of course, there's a round of preparation and there's a low chance of triggering, but overall, you can see that in these 3 skills, if the gold armor is extremely lucky with all these small percentages, there's a chance you might end up doing a lot of damage. But the most important thing is this gold armor got awakening, and that awakening has been the thing that has made it really shine. So if you look at these awakening talents, you'll notice that at the max level effect, you're looking at a 25% additional skill damage. As I mentioned before, skill damage is critical, especially for PvE, while also giving all of our squads additional Groundhog and Pangolin damage of 20%, and that includes gold armor itself and the other 2, which means that if you're using gold armor along with some other S+ tier big hitters, you're actually also increasing their damage, which makes this extremely effective. Not to mention there are also additional triggering chances, which means that those low triggering hits get an additional boost and might actually increase their damage potential due to triggering more often. There's also an additional attack of 30% to gold armor, which is helpful as well. Add all this up and that makes gold armor a very effective and that's why we added it to the S+ tier. That covers our S+ tier. Now we can move over to our S tier, and of course I'll try to talk a little bit less because I don't want to be focusing too much on the lower tier ants, given that we already covered about 5 great options that hopefully some of you already have. Okay, so for S tier, let's start with Jack Jumper. It does have a decent amount of damage. Again, it does have low probabilities of doing that damage, but if you add it up, if you're lucky, you can actually end up doing a lot of damage with Jack Jumper. There's also the Awakening, which does give it additional attack every time it releases combat skills, and that's not just to itself but rather to all squads, which is helpful, and also increases the skill damage of Jack Jumper by 15%, which is also extremely helpful. At level 20, you actually increase that attack to itself. So instead of getting, let's say, at maximum, it's talking about 20%. If you are at level 20 of Awakening, you're talking 40% each time you release a combat skill. So you can see how that is pretty helpful. Next, let's go towards Crimson Pearl, an ant that is generally had an S+ tier in pretty much all of our other PvE tier lists. If you haven't seen them, please do check them out. But for us here, we've actually kept it as S tier, and there's a reason for that, and that is that skill number 8 is a little bit weaker here, but let's get to that after discussing the other skills. So skill number 2 is its main damage dealer. It does 3 attacks, and each of the attacks do a reasonably high amount of damage to the enemy. We're talking 150% multiplied by 3, and there's an 80% chance of doing it, which is great. Skill number 5 does something interesting. If you are doing skill damage, it adds a parasitic effect to the target of that damage, and when it gets stacked 3 times, you end up dealing 700% damage to the enemy, and then it resets, and then you could stack 3 more parasitic effects, and that's another 700%. So technically, if you're lucky enough, you might be targeting the same row 3 times with skill 2 and then possibly getting a 700% additional damage to whatever you dealt earlier. So that makes this a pretty deadly combo. Skill number 8 is another skill that's pretty interesting. So based on the class you're leading, you get different effects. So if it's a shooter, you get skill, critical rate, increase of 60%. If it's a guardian, which is you get a chance to heal your squads, as you can see, not helpful in PvE. And if it's a carrier, you get extra skill damage of 35%. So both the shooter and the carrier are pretty helpful in PvE, but the guardian healing, not that helpful. So that's why this got demoted to an S tier. Now, I do have to mention that there is Awakening for this, and it does sort of make things a little better. And as you can see, in the max level, you do get a 50% chance to trigger additional soldier type effect of Crimson Pearl, which means you could get a carrier or shooter effect, which is 60% of the initial effect. And of course, at level 10, you get extra damage for the 5th skill, and at level 20, in round 2, 4, 6, and 8, there's a 50% chance to reduce the number of parasitic effects needed to actually trigger that amazing 700% plus damage to the enemy. However, all of this added up, we still think it's an S tier. Now, you could argue that it is an S+ tier, but I personally feel that it's more in the S tier when it comes to Guardians. It is an S+ tier for shooters and carriers, and you've probably seen it in our videos. It's up there, it's S+, but when it comes to Guardians, we think it might be S. Finally, let's go to our last S tier ant, and that is Mimicry Master. You probably already know it does a lot of damage, and that's what makes it so special. Like in skill 2, we're talking 55% chance to deal 505% damage, and then skill 5, 40% chance to deal 484% damage to an enemy squad, and then skill 8 is 60% chance to deal 270% damage to 3 squads. And of course, it also does have Awakening, and you can see in the max level effect, we are talking guaranteed 8th skill in the first round, and then an increase in skill damage of the 8th skill by 20%, and then the third one is 8th skill can actually increase the damage of the target by 20%. So reasonably high amount of damage. If you're interested in knowing, skill number 8 can actually deal 810% damage to the 3 enemy squads if you combine the damage all together. There's a preparation of 1 round, and then there's a 60% chance of releasing. Awakening does give it a little bit of extra perks, like, increasing the damage as well as guaranteeing it in the first round, which is probably means that it's going to guarantee it in the second round because it's preparing in the first round, and the release should be in the second round. And level 20 is essentially meaning that all of the enemy squads are going to have 20% additional damage taken in the next round. Okay, so that covers our S tier ants. Now let's go to our A tier ants, and let's start with Dusky Lurker. And you can probably already see how much love the Dusky Lurker has received. But let's start talking about its skills. It does have certain damage dealing skills which are actually guaranteed. It's also reducing enemy defense, which potentially can help in PvE, but I'm not sure. And of course, skill number 5 is also another damage dealer. But here's the interesting thing. Increases the next skill damage of our backline by 35%. And that is what makes Dusky Lurker amazing, is that it's actually helping the backline. And so if you have a huge damage dealer at the back, Dusky Lurker can make it even stronger. Skill 8, it actually increases the attack of all of our squads by 65%. And that also does some damage to the enemy's backline. But essentially what makes Dusky Lurker an A tier is the fact that it helps the backline and also increases your attack. So it's more of a support ant than an actual damage dealer by itself. Next, let's go to Crimson Fragger, another one of our reasonable damage dealing ants. It does have skills that deal damage, and you can see that it is doing 170% damage 2 times with a high chance. It's not a huge amount of damage, but the fact is that the chance is high, which means that it's probably going to release it very often. And then skill 8 is where it actually gets an extra 35% damage that lasts 2 rounds, which is pretty helpful. And then it also deals damage. But the point is that the increase in damage also helps the other skill do more damage. That's what makes this an A tier ant. Reasonable amount of damage, not as good as the others, but still reasonably good. Finally, I want to give an option for the B tier, which is not the best option, but if you don't have any other of those better options, you could use Giant Tooth. I'll categorize that as a B tier. It has the potential of doing a lot of damage, right? You can see the multipliers here, 5% per level, which means that at level 50, you're talking 250 plus the 205%. In other words, if you are extremely lucky, you'll do a lot of damage with Giant Tooth, but that requires a lot of luck, right? Each of the skills are doing a ton of damage, but each of them have a very low probability. Now, if you somehow manage to do each of the skills every round, you're probably going to do so much damage that it's going to be crazy. But what are the chances that you're going to get that lucky each round, right? Not that high. So overall, you could get extremely lucky with Giant Tooth. You can do a lot of damage, but it isn't up there with the others that actually consistently do high damage in PvE. That covers the video. I hope it was helpful for you. If you haven't watched the shooter and carrier tier list for PvE, please do watch it. I'll actually try to link it in the end of this video, which is in about a few more seconds. That way you will know which ants are best to use for each of the different classes. Here's how Pangolin looks like for our alliance, and you can see that there are some people who are doing a reasonably high amount of damage. I do generally go to them and try to see which ants they're using, so I'm bringing that information to you. Thank you so much for watching. Please hit the like button if you like this video. Please subscribe to our channel and also check out the other videos on our channel. Please feel free to also leave comments in the comment section and let me know which ants you've been using for each of the 3 Pangolin days. Thank you so much for watching and hope to see you again soon. Bye.